Hello.
Good to
Nice
see
to see
you
you
too. It's been a
too.
while. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
At least once every year.
Hopefully, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So, Bruno, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I don't need much intro, I guess. So I'm from the 3ds Max development team. I'm what we call a product owner or a product manager. So I work with the development team. I usually attend the D2 every year, and I missed attending the event. But well, we're online, which is kind of good. And I reached out to Chop a couple of months ago, I guess. I don't know, I can recall. But we asked Chop if he was willing to kind of do some kind of presentation, kind of workshop. And, knowing Chop, I knew that he would kind of do it in his own special way. So it's going to be fantastic. I've seen some of it already, and I actually learned a few things already. So I'm guess a bunch of you guys will learn a bunch of, fabulous tricks with 3ds Max. So Chop, I'll let the floor to you. So you'll show a bunch of stuff. I'll monitor the chat. I won't say much, I guess, but I'll closely monitor the chat. So if there's some question, I might interrupt you, in some way. Sure. We might wait to the end of, a small section so I can ask you a bunch of questions. So guys online, feel free to post question on the chat. I will monitor that, and we can pick Chop's brain anytime. All right, Chop, man.
Yeah. Okay, so intros. God, I think like half of the chat knows me, or more than half. But I'm Chop, together with my partner Dean. I run Polymachine. It's an ArchViz company which does whatever ArchViz companies do, and a bunch of stuff on the side of that. But this is not really the topic of this thing. So, like Bruno said, they asked me to kind of think up a workshop of sorts. And since, I don't really like to do the traditional stuff, neither in talks or in stuff like this. So I kind of assembled this super random bunch of tips and tricks that I have a feeling a lot of like beginner and even intermediate users don't really use or know about. So that was kind of the starting point. And that's pretty much it. So I'll be doing the presentation live as opposed to, having it recorded on video and stuff, which will most certainly cause no problems whatsoever, right?
No problem. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and everything's going to be super, and nothing will crash. And so Bruno is here to watch me that I don't get like too rude or something. I'm seeing, are you going to talk about selection lock? I don't know. I might talk about it, but everybody who's ever seen me knows about my pet peeve in 3ds Max. I might mention it, but if there's going to be interest in the chat later about it, I can kind of explain a bit more while we're doing this. So okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen now, and let's just jump into it, right?
All right, let's go. And again, guys, feel free to post any question. Either I can type some answers in the chat, or I will ask Chop. So,
all right. So hopefully everybody's seeing my screen right now.
I can.
Yeah. Okay, then we're good. So we're going to start with Slate, actually, with the Slate material editor. And what to say? Slate was actually introduced way back in 3ds Max 2011. It was so long ago that I actually had to check when it was. And if you're not using Slate, and for some reason entirely unknown to me, there's still people who use like the compact material editor. just please stop doing that and use Slate. And while we're at it, I'm gonna kind of try to show you some stuff you may not know in Slate. Like I said, this is based on kind of my experience of what people getting into Max or being into Max for a while don't either notice or know about. So yeah, let's get started. So first of all, there's this question of the existence of like materials inside 3ds Max, because what I tend to see in a lot of scenes made by people is that their editor is like chock full of materials. This is completely unnecessary, and I really don't like to do it because there's two ways a material can actually exist. And oh, you're not seeing Slate? Are you seeing it now?
I see it.
Okay, yeah, warn me if I mention a window and it doesn't appear, because I think I need to kind of shake it up a bit so that Zoom kind of picks it up. Right, so yeah, there is no like universe in which the compact material is better in any imaginable way. So just use Slate, please. Right, so a material can get saved in your scene if it's present like in the editor itself, or if it's actually assigned to an object. So if we assign this material to this teapot here, which you can tell by these little triangles, if we delete it from Slate, it's still going to be in the scene and it's still going to get saved in the scene, which is awesome. Which brings me to my next point. So you can really like keep your editor clean at all times. You don't have to have like a million materials inside because it makes everything slow. And once you turn it on, it has to render all these material previews. And basically, if you have a really complex scene, this can take ages and it's irritating. So you can just keep it clean. Another cool way to organize Slate, which I have no idea how this happens, but a lot of people don't even know exists, is actually views, where you can create separate views for a lot of stuff and keep your materials separate by, you know, some given topic like furniture materials, plant materials, whatever the hell. But anyways, views, super useful. So the number one like shortcut, I'm going to be talking about shortcuts a lot in this thing. The number one shortcut I use in Slate is this one, get from selected. And you can see I have it linked like to Control G. You can link it to whatever you like, but I kind of got used to that. And I use it in several different ways. The reason why I even started using it as a shortcut, I used to use like this get from selected a lot, but as you can see, like the get all scene materials thing, you can see it here, is immediately below. So what happens if you have like a production scene with, I don't know, 500 materials and stuff with like a million maps, and you accidentally press like here, problems will happen, and you can, you know, go get a cup of coffee and stuff like that. And that's kind of also pretty irritating. So I started to avoid it by using a shortcut for this. Now, the cool thing with this is, let me just try to like get it so that it's visible. When you pick a material in the scene, like when you pick an object in the scene, you go here, I press Control G, and I get this material back in. What it also does, if I go to a different view and I press Control G, it's going to transfer this material from, like, it's going to copy it to this view as well, just in case I need to move it. So I can delete it here and it's going to stay here. The other cool thing that it does is if your material's already like visible in the view, when you press Control G, it's going to zoom to it. So it's a really, really nice way to kind of find things quickly, as long as you're working on some object that has something selected, right? It obviously works with many objects at the same time, but then it's not going to like zoom into a single material, but it's going to zoom out until it covers all the materials that are like on the object that you selected. Now, my teleprompter here says assign using X plus hotkey menu. Right, I already have it assigned, but the easiest way to assign shortcuts while we're at it is by using the new hotkey editor, which you can reach by pressing X, which is known as the magic search in Max, which can bring you to absolutely anything. And if you're not using X, absolutely start using X. So for the noobs in 3ds Max, and some old dogs as well, who still might be going to like customize user interface and keyboard, like the hotkey editor is one of the best updates ever, because you can just write get from selected. If you write it properly, of course, and you can see it here. It will also tell you if like your shortcut that you're trying to use is assigned somewhere else. You can remove it from there. It's just a pleasure to use. Right, we'll get back to this though. So that's Control G, that's my #1 shortcut. So how else can you clean up your nodes a bit? You can do it like if you have a bunch of materials that have only one thing stuck into them. One super easy way is to press H as in hide, which is going to hide all the unused inputs in your materials and make it look like really sweet and compact, which is way nicer. You can also do, let's move this around a bit. You can press L, which will lay out all the materials you have in your Slate editor, which is not something you want all that often, but if you have just a subset of this thing, I'm not sure if this will work though. Let's see. No, probably not. What am I doing? I'm not sure. Anyways, there's a shortcut called C, and I think Zoom is messing my, yeah, it's messing with my keyboard shortcuts here, because this does work. So if you press C, it will do like a layout on everything that's beneath whatever you selected. And I think that option is here somewhere as well. Wait a second. Layout children.
The icon, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, here it is. So yeah, I don't know why Zoom is doing this, but yeah. Anyways, this is like something that's super, super useful when you're starting out to learn how to lay out the stuff in your Slate editor. Now, the interesting stuff, and something I really don't like, I see a lot of people not using this. So one of the cringiest moments when you're looking at somebody working in Slate is probably this. So now we don't need a bitmap, we need any kind of map. Let's see, map, OSL, I don't know. Oh, I can just copy this one. So what happens here? You have something that's plugged into 5 materials or God knows how many places, right? And you realize that either you messed it up or you want to change it with something else. So what people tend to do is this. They go like, okay, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's horrible. Don't do it like that. Also worth mentioning, even if you hide the unused nodes, you can hover and they'll appear, or you can just like leave your mouse click in the middle of the material and it's going to offer you whatever you want to plug it in. But the easiest and proper way to like replug all of this is to take your node and plug it into the output, and magic happens. Yeah, so I'm not sure why. I think it's probably because this isn't really mentioned like in help files or something, but like a weird number of people doesn't know that this exists. But anyways,
way too. I think you can drag the blue output to the other one, but
nope.
No, you need to use Control. There's a keyboard shortcut for that. I can recall which one. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, probably.
Blue way is way better.
Yeah, I don't even know about that one, but yeah, this definitely works. So, so one other thing that a lot of people don't know. Let's add I don't know, let's add a color correction map. So I want to insert this here, right? So your standard 3ds Max way is, of course, doing this, which is the wrong way. The right way is taking this node, pressing Control, and inserting it here. Now, my assumption why people don't know this, and imagine it also works vice versa. So you can take it, press Alt, and just pull it out, which is super satisfying. So there's a trick to this though. If you press Alt and drag on the node, nothing will happen. If you press Control and drag on the node, nothing will happen as well. You need to first drag it and then press the modifier key. And you can see the icon will change, and then you can insert it in. It's a bit weird because this kind of usage isn't really standard for 3ds Max. It's very rare that you actually drag something, then press a modifier. But yeah, I think it's legacy from like the beginnings of Slate. So yeah, you can just, you know, drag it, and pull it out with Alt, pull it back with Control. This is super, super, super useful. Okay, so what else do we have about Slate? Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, since we got all the time in the world, I wanted to kind of tell people that there's this thing inside Slate called controllers, which like outside of like big studios and like very, you know, developed pipelines, I've never really seen anybody use this. So controllers are like a huge topic, but let's just make one, which is like a linear float. So it has some value, right? We can drag this into a node and it will offer us like a bunch of parameters we can hook this into. So let's use saturation for this. And let's plug it in here. And let's plug it in here. And we'll plug it in here. So what happens is that this linear float value is actually now controlling all of the saturation parameters in these maps, right? So if I scroll all of this down, you'll see all of these materials like turn their values at once. The cool thing about this is that controllers are, of course, animatable. So if I do this and add a key, it will actually animate, which is way easier than doing like this separately, because at least, you know, even if you're animating like a single map or a single material, it's super nice to have this outside where it's like plainly visible. You don't have to like enter the node itself because it has no menu options. So it's not going to update the UI all the time. It's like very visible when you end up on a key, right? So it's just a nice and better way. And if you like the animation on this one material, you can actually reuse it, but just by assigning it to, you know, I don't know, whatever the given material, whatever parameters a given material gives you. So as you can see, like the OSL color value doesn't have any like parameters you can hook into, so nothing's going to happen. But if you press on a map that has some, you'll get a bunch of parameters that you can use. So controllers are super, super cool. And there's a bunch of weird stuff that you can actually do with them, because controllers can actually access like stuff from your scene. And you can see like there's float expressions, there's audio floats, so they can be based on audio data, motion capture, whatever the hell, like noise floats, a lot of stuff. Yeah, a lot of stuff you can kind of do with this and actually hook up your materials to react in kind of a smart way to objects in the scene. I did manage once upon a time to hook up a controller that reacted to the width and length of a UV map assigned to an object. That's possible. I've entirely forgotten how we did it, but it is possible. So things like that. So you can, theoretically, you could make a material that adjusts its tiling based on the size of the object and stuff like that, like the bounding box. So it's a pretty interesting thing to have. Okay, that's what I have about Slate, actually. Well, no, it's not all I have about Slate. So here's a new thing. Let's just reset, Max. So recently, a thing was added called the PBR Importer, which is in utilities, like right here, import PBR material. So this is a super, super cool thing. So what happens is, if you look at the settings, it has certain extensions for both like image types, resolutions, things that it will skip, and your standard like PBR maps. So like the suffixes that it will use to recognize which maps belong to which material, right? So what we're going to do is
that's
we're
for
going to
file name, right? It's going to search, look into the file names for string and kind of do some interpretation, right?
Yeah, it's going to parse all the file names, right? And you can add, so these are editable. So you can add, you know, whatever into whichever extensions you're using, so that if your studio is using a specific way of naming stuff, you can add all of that here and adjust. So, but the coolest thing, you can of course import files and it's going to parse them and all of that. But the coolest thing by far is this: you can import a folder, and I conveniently made a folder called example maps here. And if I search it, so let me just zoom in here. So here it recognized that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 materials. And as you can see, like ambient occlusion, diffuse goes to base color, metal goes to metalness, norm goes to normal, and rough goes to roughness. So it's all automatic, right? That's really great. But there's another great thing. So this is not done. You can choose to create PBR materials, which are a new thing, or like your classic physical material, which is nice. You can then convert that into your renderer of choice if you want. But let's use, I don't know, let's use PBR materials for now. So create 6 materials. So what's going to happen now is it's going to ask me, I hope you're seeing this window, more materials important than selected objects. Create teapot placeholders. Yes, we definitely want to create teapot placeholders. So here's your bunch of freshly loaded materials, which is super, super awesome. Okay, why is this? Okay. Let me just quickly switch this to Quicksilver so that we get a bit faster previews of everything. Right. So we have some materials. If we look at our scene, we don't need this anymore. You can see that it created teapots with previews of all of our stuff. And why do we need this? Well, because we're going to do a simple trick now. Let's bring back Slate. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a one-liner script here that's going to say the following. I'm going to zoom in onto this so that you can see it. For M in scene materials, do append. I know it sounds like gibberish right now, but give me a sec. So this is what we have. For M in scene materials, do append current material library M. What this does, is it's going to take all of the materials you have in your scene, which means all of the ones that are on these newly created teapots. It's going to go through all of them and it's going to assign them to the current material library. Which window do you not see zap? Okay. Right. So as we don't really have a material library, Max is going to create something that's called a temporary library. So check this out. When we enter this into our listener, oh, it's gone now. Okay, great. That was awesome. Sec. Now, if we zoom into this, you'll see that if you're seeing my my map browser, that I've just created a new material library with all of these 6 materials put in automatically, which is super cool. Now what I can do, just go save as, yes, b2.mat, and I have a material library that I just created with like 2 clicks and 1 line of code, and I can just delete all of this, and that's it. So if your maps are named correctly, even if you have them in like a bunch of folders, sorted, unsorted, whatever the hell, the only requirement is that they're named correctly. You can, with the PBR importer in this one single line of code, you can actually create a material library and just save it and be done with it, which I think is like a huge time saver, especially if you're working for like games and not using like third-party render engines, because then PBR materials and this kind of loading, it just bloody works. Okay, so I think that's it in regards to Slate. I don't know if it offered you that option, but even if it does, if I did it like that, you wouldn't really learn anything. So yeah, then I'd stop trolling, please. So let's move on to modeling. Let's do some modeling. Okay, let me see if I have something. Oh, I do. I'll just open this. Yes, I'm aware it can do it, but why would I do it when then I couldn't use a nice MaxScript one-liner? I'll write the thing in the chat.
You're typing it, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. So this, and why, the reason why I've shown you this is even if you're not using PBR importer and you have like some materials in a scene that you want to put in a library and save it, this one-liner script will basically do this for you super quickly. Like
taking all the materials in Slate, could it be like selection? Could it be just a view?
So this is taking all the materials in the scene.
Okay.
It doesn't actually look at Slate at all, because scripting Slate is a bit of a problematic topic because it's way more complicated than doing it like in a single line. So this basically does it like from the scene, which can be useful.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about modeling. Everybody loves modeling, right? Okay, so here's a Fuji lens that I modeled way back when. And I modeled it in a special way using a super cool trick, which I would like to share with you today. And this trick was taught to me by my friend Christian Koch, who is like 3ds Max one-man army. And honestly, before he showed me this, I had no idea. This was a few years back. So, I mean, if you look at this object, it's not like too complicated, but it's also not really that simple. You know, circular stuff can be a bit tricky to do. And especially, you know, with mapping and all of that stuff, sometimes, you know, it can be quite a hassle. but the way we do it is by modeling it straight and then bending it, which seems kind of obvious. But then you'd ask, but how do you know how it looks like in the end while you're doing it? Well, there's a trick to it, right? So what this object actually is basically, is basically this spline, right? I found some image online that had like a cross section of this lens. And it did help that I actually have the lens at home. But yeah, I just kind of drew a spline that kind of matched like the optical elements and whatever. I mean, it's nothing too complicated, right? Then I extruded the spline. Oh, we'll get rid of this. Right, so I turned this on purpose, but like this window is probably something you want to never show again, because yeah, it's gonna pop up like all the time, right? So this is just an extruded spline, and I added like a bunch of segments to it. That's pretty much it. So how we make this thing from it, right? So we're gonna use a reference, and like 3ds Max offers you these 3 like clone options: copy, instance, and reference. And also, like, unfathomable to me, nobody uses references for anything. And of course, I mean, I don't know, but I can imagine like in the chat, some of you will say, yeah, but like I use references all the time. And I'm glad you do. But this is just one of those things in Max that somehow gets ignored like all the time. So basically, a reference is an instance with a bonus. Let's call it like that. An instance with benefits. Yeah, so when you do copy a reference, what you're gonna get is this blue line in your modifier stack, right? And this blue line represents the border of the derived object. So the object you're deriving the new object from is obviously this one, right? So if you add anything to this thing, it's gonna appear on the reference copy because it's below the object derived line, right? But we don't want that. We want to add it above. So if you add it above, what's going to happen is, okay, that's not the right angle. So let's try minus 360. Oh, that's the right angle. So what's going to happen is that you're going to get a copy of this with additional modifiers, but this one will remain unchanged. So you can mess with it and do stuff. But if you do it like this and go into any modifier on the stack, what's going to happen here is this will also go down. But there's a trick to it. If you add, now don't ask me why, I just know it works. I have no idea why it works. So if you add a volume select, and it can't be a poly select, it has to be a volume select. For some reason, I think the reason is in the way volume select processes the stack below it. If you use a volume select in this place above the like derived object line, whatever you do here, this will not reset. Mm-hmm. So you'll actually be able to work on it live. So if I wanted to, I don't know, add all of these little ridges for like the focus and aperture rings, what I could do now is in this edit poly, I could like, I don't know, maybe select these loops. And now I'll focus here because you'll see it better. And I can bevel by polygon and start adding my bevels.
Dang.
Now, isn't this totally cool?
It is.
Yeah, so if you wanted to, I don't know, these are like the added edges for the like lens cap, right? So they're somewhere over here. So you could just kind of use, I don't know. Oh, is my Max gonna break now? It might. It never crashes on this, but it's a live stream, so why wouldn't it? Oh, no, it won't. Or?
No, it's safe.
Is it? I don't know. It's not moving. Wait. Let's see. Okay, we're here. So we can just select a bunch of polygons, press Extrude. Now we're going to lock this selection so that we can go here and we can watch what happens. Oh, but it's on this side. Okay. So, and here it is. So basically you can model stuff while keeping your objects perfectly straight, which is super, super intuitive and nice, while looking at the end result, like at the same time. Now, when it comes to unwrapping this of course makes it a million times easier. I mean, this is a special object because it's mostly black and all it has is just some text. But the way I did this is I, of course, unwrapped the straight one. And I have this map. And I just took the polygons that I needed where the text is supposed to be placed, like flattened them, move them around, and everything else I just scaled down and put it in the corner here so that it gets the black same color. Right, did I lock? Aha, here we are. Did I lock the selection with space? Yes, I did.
You did.
Yes, I did. So the first thing I do when I install any version of Max is go to the fabled hotkey editor. And if you look at my hotkey, space is selection lock toggle. So this is when you install Max, even if you're a beginner, even if you're, I don't know, intermediate, or even if you're not using this, this is the thing you have to do immediately, and you have to map space to your selection lock toggle. Yes, even the UVW map in a box would keep it normal because it's just getting bent. Nothing else is happening to it, right? But anyways, I might touch up on why selection lock is so important. I did make a whole video about it though, which is on YouTube. If you search for how to use selection lock, I think it will tell you pretty much everything you need to know. And it's supremely important, and please do it after we finish this. Okay, so, right, do I have anything else here? Let me just check my teleprompter. Right. Okay, so is this kind of, is this reference copying thing clear to everybody, or do you want me like to make a new kind of, you know what, let's make an example out of this, right? Yeah. Let's say, okay, let me find something. So the camera in question is my trusty Fuji X-T2, which I modeled way back when, before I bought it. Then I bought it. I liked it, so I modeled it because I didn't think I would buy it. And then I just bought it like 2 days later. But look at this like ISO control button. So how would we do this using like the exact same method? So I'll just do that from scratch so that you can see. Yeah, because
usually working on a cylinder, it's just a mess, right?
Yes. Working on cylinders is a nightmare.
And
right. So let's make a plane, and I don't know. It's like 6 millimeters tall, probably, and let's do 6 centimeters. So what we know from this image is that these little like pyramidal thingamabobs, the grips are kind of squarish. So if it's 0.6 by 6, let's do 6 by 60. Okay, we'll get squares. Awesome. $360 X. Okay, that works. Now let's rotate it 90 degrees And we'll add a welder modifier on top, which welds all the vertices given the threshold. And this welder modifier is like super underused as well. I don't know why, but it's there. Use it. So we have this. ISO button. So we'll add an edit poly. So first thing is we want to discover which is the right, this is the right side. Great. So we're just going to extrude a bit. Then we're going to extrude inside. Then we're going to extrude some more. Then we're going to extrude outside. Then we're going to extrude some more. We can leave a hole here because we're going to cap it later, right? We can take this edge and extrude it in. This is all we need because it's not visible from the lower side. There is a bit of a chamfer, like on the original one. So let's add that. And now I kind of lost, these are not square anymore. So I'll go to vertex mode and I'll just, oh, what did I do? What did I do? Oh, I didn't confirm my chamfer. Classic mistake. Okay. Yeah, we can just do this.
So how do you loop quickly like that?
What?
How do you loop those edges?
Oh, it's just a double click on the edges, right? I'm just gonna make these square again. So what do we do now? Okay, select by angle. That should work. Nope, 45 is way too much. 10, yeah, that works. Okay, our trusty bevel again. By polygon, bevel it out a bit, push it inside a bit. That's a bit too much. Okay, that works. So we got ourselves a camera button. So this one also has like a little chamfer. So let's do that as well. Cool. And we have that. Now we can go here, add an edit poly on top of this. Select like, oh, it didn't weld properly. I don't know why. Never mind. We're just going to weld all of these. Oops, that's way too much. Just a tiny weld. Okay. Border. Yeah. And we can just cap this. And we're done. This is literally it, right? So for any kind of like circular objects that are kind of like this, this method is absolutely insane and it will save you like hours of time. Not to mention, at least for me, it's super, super intuitive. So basically whatever, super fast. Now, let's talk about shortcuts again a bit, because if you can see here, we have like a pretty complex modifier stack right here. And it can be quite a hassle to kind of go, through it all the time, if you, especially going like to the base object and the top object and stuff like that. But even if you have like just one modifier or something, let's say, I don't know, let's say I have a box, right? And the only say I have a chamfer on it. Now, if I want to like, okay, so I'm just going to sidetrack a bit. I use the turn to poly here, and turn to poly is uniquely useful in a very specific way. And that is if you have, so let's say you have this and you use this model a bunch of times. So you made like a bunch of instances of this. And later on, you realize that you had to actually turn this into an editable poly, and for whichever reason. And because editable poly and edit poly modifiers aren't like 100% the same. The base edit poly object has a bit more options and it's faster. So what you can do is you can actually add a turn to poly modifier, collapse that. Yes, And all of your instances will turn to editable polys while still being instances, which is super, super awesome. Right? So, but we don't need this. Let's delete this. So if I want to access like my sub-objects on this, I need to go here, press the editable poly, and then I can use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to like access all the sub-object levels, right? And like clicking this editable poly thing all the time is not really the most intuitive of things. So hotkey editor. These things are called previous modifier. There it is. Previous modifier, main UI, category tools. So I have a mouse which has like this bunch of extra buttons on it, and I suppose most people do. So what I do is I assign like the weirdest, most complicated shortcuts to all of these mouse buttons so that they never interfere with anything else. And I just assign something to it. So for example, my mouse has a little fin on it that goes left and right. It's kind of like when you can do like left or right scroll with a mouse wheel. So, and left is Control Alt Shift O. So I'm just gonna assign that to the previous modifier. And there's a thing called next modifier. So I'll assign the other one to that. Done, save. What's gonna happen is, check this out. So I select my box and it's gonna automatically go to the top of the stack on the chamfer, right? But if I press the next modifier on my mouse, it's gonna go down into the base object. And then I can just press 1 and start editing vertices, right? So that's pretty cool. This is because there's a chamfer modifier on top, don't mind it, right? But if I want to like go up, I can press the other way and it's gonna go up. So if I'm somewhere where I have a bunch of modifiers, I can actually just scroll through them using my mouse without ever touching the modifier stack itself, right? And now Max is gonna autosave or something. Okay, that's normal. We haven't had that for a while.
Do you typically collapse your stack kind of at the end? Once you're
yes, I make a copy and then collapse it just because it's way faster, you know, to manipulate and everything. But I try to always keep like my modifier stack as procedural as I can. Right? So you can use your mouse to go through the modifier stack. It's going to save you a bunch of mouse travel because it's just, you know, there's no reason why you should do this, right? But what happens if, you know, the most commonly accessed object is actually the base object, because in a lot of situations with like a bunch of editable polys and you have a bunch of modifiers stacked on top, what you want to access is the base object. And if you do have a lot of modifiers, it's going to take you like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clicks to get to my editable spline, right? Yeah, I think Zoom is like totally killing this viewport in like certain situations because this is not supposed to be happening. But anyways, if I want to get to my spline, so that was like 6 clicks, but 6 clicks is way too much and we're lazy. So we're going to do an additional thing just for this like specific situation. I shouldn't have probably pressed. Okay, yeah, it's fine. Okay, as soon as Max says we're okay to do the concept of the macro recorder, which is a great tool. So it's here, scripting, macro recorder. You can turn it on. Now, if you open the listener, in these MaxScript windows, you can like use Control D to like clear the windows, just so you know, it's very useful. So yeah, you can enable the macro recorder here. I'm just going to turn all of these on, which is probably something you would want to actually too, but it doesn't matter at this point. So keep an eye on this like macro recorder thing. Yes, yes. Right, so if I go here, it's gonna actually tell you exactly what happened under the hood inside 3ds Max. So if I'm not gonna do the spline though, I'm gonna do the poly because I assume it's gonna be faster. Let's take this one. I press on the base object, and if you look at this is actually the MaxScript command to select a base object, right? And as if that wasn't cool enough, so you can copy this, and let's say you're here. You can paste this into the MaxScript listener, which is the same thing as this one here. Press enter on the numpad, and it's gonna jump to your base object. Obviously, copying and pasting this into a listener window all the time wouldn't be too useful. So what we're going to do instead is this. We're going to go to customize, and we're going to create a new toolbar. Okay, let's say D2 demo toolbar. And here is our little toolbar. So now we're going to take this. So let's repeat the exercise. We're going to select the base object, right? We're going to take this and we're going to drag it here. So what just happened is that Max actually created a macro script out of this. And we can go to right click and go to edit macro script, and you'll be able to see it. So it's called macro 1. It's in a category drag and drop. It has no tooltip, and it does what we just did. So let me just move this to the side. If I press this button now on any object, is going to go to the base object. That's pretty neat, right? Now, as like I did mention, this will have like a brief introduction to MaxScript and stuff. It's not really an introduction because that would be like impossible to do in this time frame. But I just want to show you like some core concepts of how this thing even works. Because even if you're a beginner, even if you're intermediate or you're an advanced user who doesn't use MaxScript, you should, because it can like save so much time and make your experience using Max like way more pleasant. So what's going to happen is, now look at this. Let's go to the top level. So let's select 2 objects. Obviously, by the nature of how 3ds Max works, we can't go to the base object of 2 objects, which are not like instances or anything else, right? So when we click this, we're going to get an unknown property because our selection is an array of objects, so it doesn't have like a base object property. Perfectly normal. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit this macro script, and we're going to say if selection count is equal to 1, do this, right? And we're going to save that. And as well as saving, we're going to press Control E, which runs scripts, and a number will appear here. When you run macro scripts, which are different from regular scripts, and the difference is that macro scripts will register themselves as a command inside 3ds Max. So when you see this number, it means that a macro script has successfully like registered itself. So let's get back to our hotkey editor because we haven't been there in a while. So our script was called...
Someone is asking, can you actually bind this to one of your mouse button? One of those.
I'll get to that.
All right.
So it was called macro 1. So I have another weird hotkey on my mouse. So I'm just going to press this one and assign it. Save. So now when I press my mouse button, I'm going to go to the base object. Now that saves a bunch of time. Now macros with, so you can say, for one modifier down, but with shift added. I'm not actually sure because macros have this thing called execute and alternative execute, which means that execute is when you left click a toolbar icon, and the alternative execute is like a right click or an alt click or something like that. But I'm not sure how that would work with shortcuts because like shift, I already have like shift in my mouse button shortcuts, but theoretically you could assign like one mouse button shortcut, which is like Control Alt something, and assign a different macro to Shift Control Alt something. So this is more of a mouse driver problem than it is like a MaxScript problem itself. You can combine these commands to do that thing you're asking for, right? Okay, so now we can hop through like the modifier stack and we can get to our base object like super quickly. But how do we, you know, if we want to get out of this thing, I don't know, if we're into like in vertices or something and we want to get out, the quickest way is, of course, to select like the top level and then unselect the object, right? So it might stand to reason that we might want another shortcut that goes to the top level of things. So if we look at our macro recorder again, and, you know, let's go to the base object and let's pick the top thing. Okay, so you can see here that the command is like mod panel set current object $sign.modifier. So $sign is a special keyword in MaxScript, which means selection, but it's not the exact same thing as typing selection, because selection, like the keyword selection, when you actually type it out, is always an array of numbers. So you can do additional functions on it, like say selection.count, which will always return like the number of items in the selection. But the $sign is actually represents anything that's selected in the viewport. So if it's a single object, it's just an object. And objects don't have a count. It's always one object, right? So this is just something to think about, but unless you really get into MaxScript, it won't mean a lot to you. But let's get back to the example, right? So right here, it says dot modifiers, square brackets, hashtag smooth, which means like you select this modifier. But this can be any modifier, not smooth. It can be turbo smooth, it can be chamfer, it can be God knows what. So it stands to reason that we might be able to select modifiers by their numbers, because that's a very programmer thing to do, right? So let's say we put in 3. Oh, look, it selected the bend. So if we put in 1, it's selected the smooth. So the way Max works is modifier number 1 is always the one that's on top of the stack, right? So let's get back to our macro that we had. We'll edit this macro script. We'll just copy it, make a new one. We'll call it macro 2 this time, doesn't really matter. We'll leave this part because we still want this to work only if one object is selected. And instead of $sign.base object, we're going to write modifiers 1. And now we're going to run this. And we got a number here, which means that the macro has registered. So once again, back to the hotkey editor. Now I'm going to search for macro, no, not Marco, macro 2. And I'm going to add my 4th mouse button to this and save. And now I can go to the bottom of the stack, to the top of the stack. I can move a level down, level up, doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want with the stack without actually moving my mouse anywhere. So this is a pretty cool workflow thing. And this is just, I mean, this is just tip of the iceberg of, you know, things you can actually do and customize Max. Now it may seem so when you look at this, but I don't really customize a lot in Max. The things I've shown you are pretty much it. I don't do like custom modifiers, menus, change the menus around or anything like that, because I try to keep my setup as simple as possible so that if anything happens or I have to reinstall or, I have to move to a different computer or anything like that, I can recreate my entire setup in like 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of, it's kind of the way I've gotten used to working. And especially, if there's a bunch of people in the studio, sometimes you have to use somebody else's machine or show somebody, how to do something. And it can be a total nightmare if your shortcuts aren't really synchronized, everywhere. Yeah. So we tend to, I think most of us like in Polymachine gotten used to just using the same ones because then everything works.
And I guess the macro recorder is useful for understand the kind of the basic of MaxScript.
Absolutely, yes.
Exactly, that string does that thing, so it's really useful to understand. Yes,
absolutely, yes, because it will actually tell you the syntax of so many commands, like which you can directly copy and paste into MaxScript, even without going through help files. You can actually do the thing, and then from the macro recorder you can figure out what's actually happening. Now it's called a macro recorder, but you can just leave it on like all the time because it doesn't actually record anything. It just prints it out in this way, right? So
it's not like Photoshop when you record action, right?
No.
It's kind of similar, but it's not the same kind of recording process.
Yeah. Basically, this just prints out a log of whatever Max is doing, like in the background, right? Okay, so what next? I had some things on the schedule more. Okay, right. While on the topic of shortcuts, there's this thing in Max. So the Q button is called Smart Select. And what actually happens is right here, or should I say right here?
Yeah.
This icon changes, right, when you press Q. So what this does, it gives you like various options of, selecting things like square, circle, whatever. Now, the thing is that 99.9999999% of the time, you're going to want to use like the regular rectangular thingamabob, right? So once again, we go back to the hotkey editor. And if you press search by hotkeys, which is like, I don't know who added this to this thing, Bruno, but like hugs and kisses from me.
I might know. I can kiss them.
You do that, please. So you're writing Q, and it will tell you whatever Q does in every segment of 3ds Max. So in the main UI, which is what we're using, it says Smart Select. And Smart Select is not what we want. Because this will actually change between all of these modes, and it can be quite a hassle. So what we do want is select object. Main UI, select object. Now here what's happened. If I press Q, oops, yeah, this is not gonna work. So it says conflicts with Smart Select because it's already assigned. So I can just remove it from there and assign it to select. And now, whenever I press Q and how many times I press it, it's always going to go to your normal selection, right? Also, going to like the select object command is actually kind of useful sometimes when you want to exit like a given command. You're, I don't know, in editable poly mode and you're doing quick slices and stuff. You can just press Q and exit all of that. So another thing that's useful with like the regular select object mode is that when you're doing a bunch of stuff on, I don't know, vertices, and for some reason you want to select a bunch of them, there is no danger you will move any of them. Because the regular like select and move, sometimes when you're trying to like do this very quickly, you'll end up inevitably moving stuff around, and this just prevents that from happening, right? Okay, so let's see. What else do we have here?
Are you showing how to use a macro to kind of model something? Or
yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. That's a good idea. So let's take something super basic. Let's say, I want to make a window frame. This is going to be the world's ugliest window frame, but it really doesn't matter at this point. But we'll get rid of this button because it's on our mouse now and we don't need it anymore. But let's make a box, just convert it to a poly. Doesn't matter. We're going to eyeball this. So I'm just going to go to here. I'm going to clean this up just so I can see what's going on. Now, I'm going to select this polygon and this polygon. Then I'm going to inset them like so. Then I will bridge them to get this, okay? And then I'll select these guys and these guys. Let's attach these to an element. Now we got holes here. This will end up in the macro, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go to border mode. I'm going to select all these borders and I'm just going to cap them, right? So I'm going to take these guys, move them back. And I have a basic window frame. So if I take all of this and copy it, let's make a new script. I could drag it to a toolbar. Probably, yes. I can actually do that too. So let's make a box. Let's turn it to an editable poly. Let's press the button and hope for the best. And I'll be damned, it happened. Right, so I can add a chamfer, which is way too big. Still way too big. And I actually have like a pretty decent window frame, or at least a start of one, right? So there's these like editable poly operations that you're going to be doing like all the time. And sometimes it stands to reason that you can like turn on your macro recorder and just, select stuff, move stuff around, and extrude, bridge, bevel, chamfer, whatever you want to do, and just save that as a macro. And that's exactly what's going to happen when you reuse it. Now, the thing is that I use the box on purpose because every time you create a box, it's going to have 6 faces. And these faces are going to be numbered 1, 2, 6. So this is polygon 3, right? And this is polygon 5. So, oops, sorry. This one, right? So every box you make is going to have the 2 of those, and the macro recorder is going to remember that you selected polygons 3 and 5 and you beveled them in, right? Or insert them inside, then you bridge them. So this is kind of important because if you use this macro on something with like entirely different topology, which you could do, or you can't. Oh, sorry, that's a sphere. We need a poly. Okay, let's do a poly. Let's clear this and clear this. Let's try to use it. As you can see, we're going to get a bit of gibberish here because it did select like polygons 3 and 5, but on a sphere, these polygons are something else entirely. So this is something you want to keep an eye on if you're doing like macros. Always keep an eye on what your selection is and how you can actually, which part of the whole chain of commands you can take out and do a macro from without messing up your selections. It's okay to do it more granular. You could
have recorded even the box creation, right?
Yes, you could have. You could have, yes. But honestly, I think this is a bit more useful because then if I have a model which comes with like a bunch of boxes, I could just reuse this all the time. And,
or if you have a wall and there's you have the hole for the window, you just, you create your primitive, just the right size, boom, you get your frame.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's what the macro recorder does. And it's a great, also like super underused feature, but it's really awesome. So I do have some other things and we do have some time. That's great. Yes. So Okay, so one thing that people don't use, and also they should, is called 2D pan and zoom. So if you, let's say I'm in a perspective view, and even better, let's make a camera by pressing Control C. So now I have a camera of this view, right? So I'll get back into this. And let's say I want to adjust this, some tiny thing here, for example, right? So I can't zoom in a camera, and I can't really, see exactly if, let's say I wanted to, move this so that it perfectly kind of fits here, but from my camera view. Let's say it's a question of, tricking perspective or something like that. If you press 6 and write in 2D, you're going to get 2D pan and zoom mode. So once you're in this, you can zoom in and pan, and your camera won't move. And this is actually a camera view. So the awesome thing about this is that when you're doing like photo montages or stuff like that, you can zoom in all the way you want and like adjust your stuff in camera, and your camera will never move. Once you're done, you can press X again, right in 2D, and exit pan and zoom mode, and your camera never moved.
That's beautiful. I actually learned about that too last year.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, this like making like montages on backplates without this is a total nightmare, and it's just it works so beautifully. Like
when you want to work on your composition, just make sure that some object don't overlap, stuff like that. It's
exactly.
Yeah. I love it.
Exactly. Right. So right, that's the 2D pan and zoom, and this is, I think this kind of ends the list of things I wanted you to see, like wanted you all to see that maybe, it inspires you to go research more a bit into how these maybe a bit obscure things in Max work. Now, another like super underused tool that I just wanted to show people, because I think like a lot of people aren't even aware this exists, is the section, which is this crazy thing that, like, if I make a section, that's not the best view for this, but if I make a section here, and if I move it around, it actually creates like a spline, which is a section of all the objects in the scene. It's like, I've learned this like years after I started using Max, and it's just this great tool, especially like in architecture. This saves like so much time. Even the nice thing about it is that it creates this really nice like sections, of everything. So you can go to the modify panel and like create shape out of it, and you'll still have your section, so you can use it to create like topo lines and stuff, but this will leave a spline behind it, right? So yeah, this is pretty cool stuff.
So how did you do
Also,
that? I kind of missed the beginning. I was looking at the chat. It's a type of spline?
no, the section is it's an object in splines, right? It's this last poor underused one. Also, like if there's somebody who's maybe a bit of a beginner in Max here, a few of the most useful things you can use in Max is Shift plus something, which means like Shift G hides and hides all geometry. It doesn't matter which layers, which whatever the hell, it doesn't really matter. So Shift and G is geometry. Shift and S are splines and all sorts of like spline shapes. Shift and C are the cameras, also super useful. And Shift L does the same with the lights. So, Shift whatever. So you can combine this in a sense that, sometimes it's really tricky to select some stuff. So if I want, I don't know, this spline, I'll just hide all the geometry, like, go hide unselected and bring the geometry back. And I'm going to be left just with this. So it's it's a really neat way to quickly, move around the scene. Using a lot of stuff like this, I actually don't almost never even use layers. And to be honest, I almost never even name stuff anymore because it's become so easy to just find my way around everything that it just becomes a hassle.
But how do you manage like big scene? Like do you use groups and stuff or?
Yeah. Just, groups. Sometimes in like huge scenes, okay, you'll have layers and stuff, but it's like, I don't know. We've just gotten used to working without it because most of the time it's not really all too necessary. There are some scenes, of course, where I really need or want to keep everything like super, super tidy. And that's when, of course, I'll do the whole, thing. Like, oh yes, Shift and H hides and hides helpers like dummies and tapes and stuff like that. So you can basically do all of that stuff. Now, I have so yeah, we could talk about, let's say, I do have like a bunch of MaxScript one-liners. If people are interested in that, I can just quickly show you like what MaxScript can do in a single line of code, which is kind of I think it's probably nice. So let's try and do this. Let's move these around a bit. I don't know. So say for some reason that I wanted to, I don't know, move all of these things here like to 0 in the Z-axis, right? And as everybody knows, Z-axis is up. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. People using these strange softwares. Y is up, it makes no sense at all. Z is up, it will forever be up. So let's select something, right? I don't know, let's select this one and this one. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna write selection dot pause dot Z equals 0. Now, so what's gonna happen is that the pivot points of these objects are going to go to 0 in Z. And that's like, sometimes when you have a bunch of objects, you can just select a few. And instead of, if it's a complex scene or you're in camera or God knows what, there's no easier, quick way to snap to Z0. You can just write this in and it's gonna like, do the magic. You can also write stuff like, select geometry. Is going to select all the geometry. It's not going to select like any splines. This works vice versa, of course, and you can write like select splines.
Or select lights.
Oh, sorry, select shapes. Because it's shapes. Yeah, but you can select all the lights. Yeah.
Okay.
You can select all the lights like that too. Another very useful thing actually is sometimes you get models that have some materials assigned and God knows what, and you don't want these materials because of reasons. So let's go back to our PBR importer thing, and let's import those teapots back. Yeah, create 6 materials. Just to show you this one quickly. Yes, I want teapots. Yeah, so that's actually a good one. You can also like right click on the Z spinner, right? So say we have a situation like this, but if you select more objects, you have no spinner. And locally, they will have a spinner, but locally it's always 0, right? So if you want to move a bunch of them, still the fastest way is just to write, selection.pause.z equals 0. But there's a cool thing that you can use. So let's say, I hope this works. Let's say $.net equals undefined. And bam, we got rid of all the materials, right? So now if I delete all of these, which the PBR importer made, my scene is actually entirely empty of materials, and well, except the one that I have here, right? Let me just delete that too. So if you want to clean something up, this is like a super cool way to make sure, oh, I have the lenses somewhere in the scene, right? This is a super cool way to make sure that you're getting rid of like every material on whatever you have selected, right? So that one's super easy. $.net equals undefined. That's what it looks like. This is one of the easiest ones and like a super quick way to get rid of stuff.
Do you have one to move the pivot, the object pivot at the bottom of the object?
That's one. I don't have that one as a one-liner though, but one could be made probably. I mean, I'm guessing that like at least 6 people in this chat could write this or explain this way better than I could. I'm just a hobby coder, but
no tricky question, that's fine.
No, the thing is that, you know, MaxScript, the way I code things, and which is why I believe most people could, is I don't actually know any of this by heart. It's just like when I need something, I look it up and I do it. And yeah. I tend to kind of very quickly forget syntaxes and stuff. It's just, unfortunately, the way my brain is wired. But here's another good one. Like, and these are just silly examples on why you might consider maybe doing like learning actually some MaxScript to help you along. Let's do a chamfer here. Let's copy this and paste it here. There will come a time in your scenes where you have like a bunch of chamfer modifiers on a bunch of objects, which are not instances, and the chamfers are not instances. And let's say you want to turn them off because reasons, right? You either want to model something extra or it doesn't really matter why, right? There's a line that you can write. Let's go to new script. It's going to be more visible here, I think, if I write it like this. Yeah. So you can do something like this. Or let's say foo is like your typical dummy variable in get class instances. Chamfer. So what this thing is going to do is it's going to get all the instances of the chamfer class. So the chamfer class represents an instance of a chamfer modifier. And for every one that it finds, it's going to disable it, right? So when I click this, you can see that all of them are disabled.
So even if they were not instance?
Yeah, the instance in this sense is not like a instance inside 3ds Max. It's an instance of the idea of a chamfer, right? It's not. So if you write enabled instead and like run the script, wait a second. Why doesn't it want to run? That's a. Why is my script not running? That's weird. Oh, Jesus. It's true. Not enabled. Idiot. Okay. Yeah. And now you've enabled all the chamfers in your scene. This also works with stuff like turbo smooths.
Oh, yeah.
And all of that stuff. So if you sometimes when you're assembling like huge scenes, you'll get these modifiers in a bunch of objects and you will want to kind of turn them on or off or something like that. And this is a very, very simple way of doing this. One that's particularly useful, I think, where was it? I didn't have it somewhere. Oh yeah. So there's this thing you can do. Let's do it like this. This is also like a very simple, but like a really cool example of a useful part of like a one-liner. So say you have a bunch of objects, let's say hundreds of objects, and some of these objects don't have materials, but you're not sure which ones, right? So it would be cool if you could like select, let's say, we'll go through all the objects where the material of this object is undefined. And for each of those, we're gonna collect that. Now, this syntax itself is not like the most readable one and not the most obvious one if you're just starting out in MaxScript or any coding at all, but it does make sense. And as none of these objects have any materials, it's just gonna select all of them, right? If one of those had a material, so then you can just go and like hide unselected and you'll immediately see all the objects in your scene that don't have materials assigned, right? You can do like crazy stuff with one-liners. I mean, crazy. It's useful stuff. You can do, things like assigning a random wire color to objects, which is again super useful if you're importing a bunch of CAD data and you can't really find your way around. Sometimes randomizing like wire colors can be really cool. We can actually do that one because it's also like really simple and like really obvious like what it does. So let's see. Now I'm just gonna move this here. So again, we're gonna like loop through all of the objects. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna say the wire color for any given object that we're looping through is equal to color. Now, color is a special kind of variable, it's a vector actually, which has 3 values. So let's say random from 0 to 255, which is, anywhere from, this will give a result anywhere between 0 and 255. So when we start this one, am I doing something wrong? Probably. Oh yeah, my color doesn't have, no, wait. Wait, am I missing a bracket? Oh God, yes, I'm missing a bracket, Jesus. Yeah, I don't really do this every day, but this is meant to kind of just show you what's possible, not the way you're supposed to do this, right? You're supposed to do research and, learn how to code properly, not like me. So do as I say, not as I do. Okay, that should work. I honestly have no idea why this doesn't work. Wire color, that's weird. Do I have them like on? No, it's my object. That is weird. Jesus, I'm sorry about this. This used to work. Scripters inside the chat, why is my like one-liner not working?
Please fix this, guys.
Yeah, fix it, because I'm like seriously confused.
I'm not a scripter, I'm sorry.
Want my left bracket in front of color? Why do I want? What? No.
Is that just
Jesus, is that it? No, definitely not it. No, I'm doing something wrong, but it doesn't really matter. Screw that. It's like, I don't know why, because I typed this like this morning because like I wanted to test it out and it does work. So this is weird. But anyways, I think we spent like most of the time we have. I did want to go through like Retopo and like step files and stuff like that. But, let's we can probably, you know, do some questions if there are any, because we have like maybe 20 minutes left, if that.
So guys online, if you have any question, please hit us with anything. Maybe not MaxScript question though, please.
Yeah, like I said, I'm far from being an expert in this. It's just I use it when I need it, and it's super useful.
You want to show Smart Extrude a bit? Do you have time or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that one is probably for the lazy ones who don't update, like to newer versions of Max, I suppose. But yeah, Smart Extrude in the new one is pretty insane, because it does these crazy things, which, you know, it's like a live Boolean of sorts, which I like a lot. And like some of these shapes and things you can do with it are kind of, it would be a pain in the ass, you know, to do this without Smart Extrude, because you would have to clean up a lot and like do a bunch of stuff. And like with Smart Extrude, I mean, especially for like industrial objects and things like that, it gets really crazy how quickly you can like do a lot of different stuff. And, you know, model something, put a chamfer on it, and bam, you're golden. It's like, it works by, you know, pressing shift and dragging along whatever it is you want, but this used to not be the default behavior. So even things like this work, which is great. Like you might need to fix shading on some faces, but that's perfectly normal and not really a problem. But, you know, having stuff like this work automatically is just a huge lifesaver. Okay, yeah, Zap fixed it. Okay, thank you. It was a bracket issue. I'm just gonna try that quickly because now I'm super interested. Let's see. Does it work though? No, you see, that's the trick. It really doesn't. And because I'm sure the syntax works, even mine works because it worked before, but obviously I've either done something to the scene or something's happening. I don't know.
Blame Zoom, man.
Yeah, we're gonna blame Zoom on this one too. God knows, it's messing with my MaxScript. So yeah, Smart Extrude is super cool. And you know, if there was one reason why you'd update to like the latest Max, this would probably be it, because it's
like chamfer modifier, turbo smooth on top of this, and
it's pretty crazy. I mean, it can even like do holes like this, which is pretty insane. Like, and then, you know, chamfer obviously works. Where is it? Here it is. And it really makes, you know, like a nice geo on top of all of this. So, I mean, that's, you know, that's as quick as you can get. And things like these can be used like super quickly for baking and stuff. So yeah, some exploration into Smart Extrude is definitely a good thing to do. Now, I will say that, you know, for longtime users of Max like me, it was quite a nightmare to kind of, you know, change my muscle memory.
Yeah, rewire your brain a bit.
Yeah, shift and drag used to be just copying like to a new element or object, and now it's Smart Extrude, and now Control Shift and Drag is like the old thing we used to do. So it's a bit of a challenge to kind of rewire your brain, but it's totally worth it. I mean, this is like, for a lot of these like industrial, even like architectural models, this saves so like unimaginably large amount of time, because you can do things like, I don't know, you know, let's create a poly, let's do some quick like Swift loops. Yeah, that should do it. Let's do this, this, this.
Such a time saver.
Yeah, I mean, especially this, the way it picks out this bottom.
Yeah.
That's like one of the best things ever, because doors, whenever you do stuff like this in architecture, it's always the door that's the problem, because extruding or bridging is going to produce a polygon here, which you'll have to like manually delete.
Yeah.
And
oh man, that's so good.
Yeah, and bridging like requires you to select both sides of the thing and them to be like the exact same topo, which is also a problem. So this kind of just works. And the nice thing about it is that it works the other way too. So when you're doing beams, you can do things like this as well. So it's especially for like, blocking out basic architectural shapes and stuff like that. This is insanely useful, right? And somebody asked about Retopo, I think. I did prepare something. Oh my God, we're gonna end up spending the whole 2 hours. Sorry guys if I'm like boring and stuff or too slow.
You're not.
Let's reset this. I have an object. Something's isolated. Okay. Yeah, this is going to take a while to load.
It's a big one.
Well, it is. I didn't intend to like mess with the big one, but all I want is a small object from this big object. It's not that big. There we are. Right. So this is a like armored personnel carrier that we did for a game called Red Solstice 2. But so this is straight from CAD. As you can tell by like the topology of this thing, because it looks like a plan, basically like a design drawing. And this is pretty much what it is. It's directly imported from CAD. So these are all body objects. Body objects is what you get when you import stuff from CAD, and they look like this. They have a bunch of options. For like detailed stuff, what you want to do with them is just go here and press fine. So you'll notice like the underlying mesh changes. So if I turn this into an editable poly, you can tell like how the actual mesh looks like, but we don't want this. We want the fine one. So when we turn this into an editable poly, it's going to create something like this, which is way nicer for Retopo and stuff, because it has all these nicely curved areas that can, get retopoed easily. So my advice for Retopo, it's like, help it help you. It's basically all I can say about this, because Retopo, the reform algorithm is insane and it works perfectly. But you sometimes do need to kind of help it along. So what I tend to do is, if you look at this, let's go through the steps one by one, right? So this is just the exact same copy of this fine resolution mesh that I have. And if you look at this object, it's kind of symmetrical in 2 axes. So why not, retopologize just a quarter of it instead of the whole object? It's 4 times faster, and it like increases your chances of success significantly, because this is way easier for the algorithm to understand. So once we do the retopology, you can see that it actually on this object takes like 2 seconds. You can see that, it looks pretty nice. It's decent. It's all nice quads. It's not too bad topo at all. You could, and then you do the opposite of what you did with the slice modifier. You do the opposite with the symmetry modifiers. You just turn it on and bam, you have like a very nice quad object. So as for retopology settings themselves, I basically never even touch this. I just use like the face count, and maybe sometimes I turn on like selected edges if I want some specific edges to be like super sharp. But most of the time I just use smoothing groups, and I make sure that, you know, when I'm inside my poly, my like smoothing groups are, you know, adjusted properly, right? So that they kind of work. This looks incorrect, but as I'm using only a quarter of this, it's actually fine. So, yeah. Oh, I think we'll be like 3 minutes more. That's it, pretty much. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry, that was the director of the stream.
We're talking to a big brother.
Yeah, we were talking to Big Brother. Right. So after we do this, we can put in a smooth and adjust like the threshold so that we get back this shaded part. And then, you know, with an edit poly, did I do anything with an edit poly here? No, I didn't. I don't know why. Probably I could select this, and I don't know. Of course, it's not gonna, stupid Zoom. Okay, yeah, it's not gonna let me have my shortcuts. I don't know why this happens, but you know, I could probably go here and just clean this up a bit quickly, because those are really not necessary even for like, because where we want the resolution in a circular object is actually in the damn circle, not like, you know, these things. And like, if I do it like this, I can use a turbo smooth and get this like super sexy, you know, super smooth, nice edges everywhere. Or I can, you know, clean it up a bit and just use a chamfer instead. Everything's valid here, depending on, you know, the final use of the object and whatever it is that you want to do. Right. Oh, that's too big. And probably adjust the minimum angle. And there we go. Yeah. So yeah, retopology, like it basically works on its own. There's nothing much you can do. So you just need to make life easier for it. So, you know, if you have things like, I don't know, I'm just going to use a cylinder as a like really stupid example of the concept. If you have things like this, right? The nasty part to retopologize on this would actually be this, because it's round. These parts are just a flat cap on whatever it is that you have. You can just delete those, and you can then retopo what's left. And, you know, since it's symmetrical, you can kind of delete those too. And then you can retopo just this, then use a symmetry, bring it back, cap the holes, and you're done. So it's going to be, it's way faster and way easier to manually fix something after retopo than trying to adjust the retopo to work on a very complex object. You know, you need to kind of make life a bit easier for it, and you're going to get way better results. At least in my experience so far, I did use like Retopo a lot.
And of course, the combo with the new baking tool. I mean, you create your high res, your low res, just bake it down to the all the details. It's
yeah. I did. I tried the baking tool only once because my job description doesn't really involve it.
I know.
But it worked. So I tried it once and it worked. That's all I can say about it. And it's pretty cool that it actually, you know, it actually does the job. Because before, baking was way easier outside of Max in pretty much anything. But like now, I think it's way faster just to do it inside Max whenever you can, because, and you get to freely pick the renderer you want to use, which is super nice because you can use Scanline for like a bunch of things, which is super fast, or Quicksilver. I think Quicksilver even works too. So yeah. That's pretty much it, I think. Oh yes, before we go, just a final like last one. So the Quicksilver hardware renderer is this renderer that comes with Max, which nobody uses, and everybody should use it because it's super cool in specific situations. Let's say you forgot to output a specific render pass. I don't know, an alpha, or especially like Z passes, like Z buffers, and like world position passes. So Quicksilver can export those, and it works like blazing fast, and it does, you know, a few passes a second. So if you forget any of those, I tend to just ignore them when I do the animations, and just, you know, switch to Quicksilver and just super quickly export them later for like using compositing and stuff. That's just a great tip. Do experiment like with Quicksilver and like the render elements it can do. So ZDepth, Object ID, Material Alpha. Oh, and Scanline does, if I'm not mistaken, Scanline does the world position. ZDepth, where is it? One of these does world position. I don't know which one it was, or it doesn't. What did I use for that? Oh, velocity. Here it is. Yeah. So Scanline does velocity, and Quicksilver can do like alpha and C depth and stuff. It's like the fastest way to do that shit if you want. Okay. That's pretty much it. It's been almost 2 hours practically. I didn't know this would take so long. I hope you guys had fun. If anybody has any questions, we have like 10 minutes left. So this would probably be the time.
Someone asked, what was your go-to? What do you prefer for unwrapping?
Right. So Rism UV is like, so I use a combination of Max's like built-in unwrapper and Rism. Rism UV is probably the best like dedicated tool for unwrapping there is. It takes a while to like get a hold of, like mentally, but once you do, it's like it's just mind blowing. And when you combine it with certain things in like the Max UV unwrapper, that's pretty much everything you will ever need for anything. So if the object is simple enough, I use the unwrapper inside Max because it's just way faster. And if it's complex or there's some specific stuff you need to do, then I kind of go to Rism and just export there. That's it.
Awesome. I don't see any other question. A lot of feedback. So great presentation, great workshop. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
Whew. Okay.
Thank you, Chop.
It was a lot. That ended up being a lot of stuff. I didn't really imagine it going this way. But yeah, thanks for sticking here, guys and girls. And all I can say is that doing online talks is horrible. Doing workshops is even worse. This will be like so much easier on a stage. But yeah, because this way I can't see any of you and how bored you are with all of this. So it's kind of frustrating, I gotta say.
It did not crash once. That's at least, that's
it was all live and nothing crashed. So yeah, I'm gonna congratulate myself on that one.
Yeah. So I just want to quickly, if you guys want to try anything new, you have feedback, idea, complaint, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can also try the Max Beta. So everything that we are working on, we release a new, beta release of Max every second week. So you can actually try, give feedback. You can break stuff, you can chat with Zap. So please try our Max Beta. It's the best way to try what's new and what's coming next, because we're building the next Max for you guys. So we want to make sure that we're building the right thing. So please give us some feedback. Again, thank you, Chop. That was awesome. I actually learned a bunch of stuff. I've been using Max for almost 20 years and I learned, again, bunch of things. So that was
you're not lazy enough. That's the problem. You have to be extremely lazy, and that makes you learn all of these shortcuts and stuff, because anything is better than working, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, having friends who are smarter than you, that's the best recipe you can have for this stuff.
Oh, it's true.
Next, come on. Who's next? Yeah, thanks everybody. Bye.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.